This is the Frat House Sports Show. And now for this week's completely different and humorous perspective on everything sports, here's Frat House Mike and Sidekick.
All right, well, hey, thank you for joining us here on one of our favorite programs of the entire year. This is our semi-annual
Snow Roundtable.
No, it's
Snow sale, semi-annual snow sale.
This is our semi-annual
Money out there, folks.
NFL Roundtable show, and we've got the entire gang here, as you can see. We've got Brandon, our technical director, and we've got Uncle Mark with us, and of course, Sidekick myself. And what we're going to do for the next 35, 40 minutes or so, we're going to talk nothing but NFL football. That's it. We do it twice a year. Last time we did it was 25 weeks ago. That was preseason. This is our end of season version. And this show, at least for the first half of it, is being brought to you by our friends down at Herb FM Sports Radio down in Baltimore. Thank you guys down there. They've been very, very loyal to us, and they've been broadcasting our shows every Saturday afternoon right there on their internet radio station. We appreciate that. And every Saturday morning, I usually try to get over to our Facebook page and make sure I get the schedule up there. So if you're not familiar with it, you got to check our Facebook page on Saturday morning. And what we're going to do here is we've got a number of broad topics, gentlemen, just like we always do. And we've got our technical director who is seated this evening, our substitute back there, doing it all, keeping track of the graphics and the time and the gun. And what they'll be doing is timing us and giving us a little indication of when we've kind of gone over time, and you can bet we will do that. One of the things I thought we would do is go back and take a look at a topic that we didn't open the show with back in July, but it was close to the opening of the show. We were talking about a lot of the new coaches that were going to be coming in this past season that just concluded. There were 8 new coaches that we saw come across the entire league. And I thought we would go back and take a look and revisit some of those coaches that came in. But before we get to that and our comments on them, what I want to do is I want to go back to that hot July afternoon when we were right out here behind the frat house out in the big backyard we've got, and give you just a little snippet of how things went back at that time before the entire season started. So let me bring that to you right now. Let's talk about some of these coaches for a moment. Is anybody jumping off the list here at anybody where you think to yourself, this guy has the biggest chance to turn this team around? Sidekick, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go with the most obvious one. I think Andy Reid in Kansas City probably has the chance to make the biggest impact. He's in the offseason. They signed Alex Smith. They've got they got the first draft picks. We know Andy Reid's record from Philadelphia. While his last year he was
4-12.
Sorry, look at my notes. Yep, 4-12. But he's 130 and 93
yep.
for his career as the Eagles head coach. So I think potentially he's got the best opportunity to turn that team around.
Uh-huh.
I think Chip Kelly does, just because he's new and he's compared to us as being Philadelphia Eagles fans living in the area. Compared to how many years? 14 years with Andy Reid?
Yes.
Yeah. It's something new. It's something fresh. I think he makes an impact.
I think it's going to get a lot of media attention.
I agree. That's what
trying to see how his
it's college kind
translates
of
to the NFL.
The gizmo offense that I've kind of referred to, which I don't put much credit into.
Well, and just want to say one thing we haven't talked about him, but Bruce Arians in Arizona with Carson Palmer and all the weapons on that team are going to be a force to be reckoned with, because he essentially led the Colts to the playoffs last year
I agree with
while
you
Pagano was hurt. I know we have to switch topics. I just wanted to get that out there.
Carson Palmer, I
think that's the question mark.
I think Carson Palmer doesn't get enough credit sometimes.
Okay, so now all of you saw that piece, and a couple of us remember it. Let's take a look at some of the coaches that we saw come through the new ones that came through the league this season. And let's go take a look at it realistically now, because we can look at it in real time. Who had the biggest impact sidekick? You were on to something back in July, huh?
Well, looking back at the video and stuff, going into the season, I thought that Andy Reid with the Kansas City Chiefs with that #1 pick, they took that offensive tackle. Alex Smith came in, so I thought they had the greatest potential, and he had the greatest potential to have the greatest impact. Looking back at it now, I'd have to say I'd go with the San Diego Chargers head coach, because while Andy Reid is, Brandon said many times, inherited a great defense. He had Jamal Charles. He brought in Alex Smith, got an offensive tackle with his first pick, and they were out the first round. Typical Andy Reid. Okay. So he really didn't do it. If you look at the previous year record to this year's record, they went from two and something the previous year to the playoffs this year. You think, oh, that's great.
Well, yeah.
He didn't really. But what did he do?
But there really wasn't any major difference to the team.
Bingo. So I don't think there was that much of an impact. The reason I'm saying that San Diego Chargers, they were 7-9 the previous season, and they went to the second round of the playoffs this year.
Right. But that's all. I look at it, and I'm looking for everybody else.
I mean, it also depends on what your definition of impact is. My definition of impact is who got the farthest.
Well, you go from 2-14, and you win 9 more games and go 11-5, and you take the team to the without really any substantial change in your personnel. I think that's got to be the biggest impact. That's just my personal opinion. McCoy over there at San Diego, that was simply a reversal of 2 wins. Brandon.
I agree. I mean, I think Andy Reid had a bigger impact overall. I would have liked to see him go further. I don't like the one and done.
Yeah.
I mean, the one and done kind of, I don't know, it's
That's
almost
tired.
Like, yeah. I mean,
that was 14
really,
years in Philly.
They had what, 9-0 they were the last undefeated team, and then it just kind of sputtered from there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I see Dave's point in the sense that the Chargers developed as the season went and made the playoffs on the last week.
The last week, right.
I mean, they snuck in, but then they won a game.
Backed in.
Well, they backed in.
They knocked off.
They won. They won their game. They needed help, and they got the right help.
Right.
But at the same token, they went in and won a game.
Yeah.
Where Andy Reid didn't. So, I mean, how do you judge?
Uncle Mark, one of the things that Brandon had brought up in the clip that we just saw from July, Bruce Arians, your team out there in Arizona. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's a funny thing looking back. Had I been on this last year, I would have probably chosen him as the guy to watch to make a big impact on a team that was ready to turn a corner anyway. The heartbreaker they lost, right? 10-6, should have put them in another division. They would have been in to at least make a little noise.
Talk about San Diego, and there's Arizona.
There it is. So I do like that. Whisenhunt, right? The flip side of the coin. Whisenhunt, who went out to the Chargers, right, and had a nice postseason, and like you say, got within a win of making a lot of noise for the big game. Is now headed to
Tennessee.
Tennessee Titans. And boy, does he got his work cut out for him. So, a la what you're saying, sidekick with Andy Reid, can this guy go in and fix a broken thing, or is he going into a good thing and just kind of running with it until it dies, it breaks, it's in the ground, and nobody cares? What will Whisenhunt do? He's got a lot of work ahead of him. I think this is a make-or-break year for that man in terms of, is he OC, is he HC? Which way are we going with him?
The interesting thing I think that'll be telltale, too, will be starting next season, how many of these coaches can come back and maintain what they were able to do? Andy Reid, Chip Kelly. I mean, I've got big questions about whether Chip Kelly, that was all just, beginner's luck. Right. Bruce Arians, I think, is another one that you have to sit there and say.
Trestman, too. I think in Chicago, considering he didn't have, he had his usual quarterback problems, but that was his predecessor, too. But I like Trestman. He kind of got that.
Trestman actually went backward, though, compared to what Lovie Smith had last year. They went from 10-6 to 8-8.
Well, let's be honest. Lovie Smith shouldn't have been fired. I'm sorry.
We know that. We talked about that in July.
But.
Well, anyhow, if we were to give a coach of the year, real quick.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, do you give it to either one of those, or do you give it to like Pete Carroll? I mean, he's in the Super Bowl this year.
Wow.
I mean, John Fox. I mean, I don't know that he did much of a coaching job. Peyton Manning pretty much runs that team. Jim Harbaugh, 2 years in a row on the cusp of it.
That's a good bet.
I wouldn't give it to any of these guys. I mean, of all of them, I think Arians probably did the best job with what he started with.
All right.
I mean, all things considered, they should have been in the playoffs in 9 times out of 10, 10-6 is putting you in the playoffs.
I mean, because personally, if I'm giving a Coach of the Year, I got to give it to Andy Reid. That's just where I go to it. I'm simply looking at records and the accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody expected KC to be where they were. That's where I come down with it. Okay, let's go over and take a look at a couple of things came up out of this year's NFC Championship game. And let's touch on the first one. And this was a topic that was brought to our attention by Jen, actually, on our staff. And she said, hey, let's take a look at this whole concept of the nouveau, I guess and that's my word I'm using for it, the nouveau quarterback, all right? The mobile quarterback, the Colin Kaepernick, the Russell Wilson type quarterback that we saw in the NFC Championship versus that kind of old guard, pocket, dropping back in the pocket passing type of quarterback like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in the AFC Championship game. And the question I'm throwing out there right now, and let me start with you, Brendan. Are we seeing the end of an era of the pocket passer?
No, I don't think so. I think you could have either or, and I think you will continue to see that. Even if you look at like quarterbacks coming up through the pipeline, you're going to have some that are mobile, and you're going to have other traditional pocket passers. And I think it's going to come down to coaching, how you design your offense, how you call plays. I mean, obviously, both sides of the coin, you can't argue. You got one of each in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Both conferences, they did match up, the similar quarterbacks in the conference championship games, but you still have one of each in the Super Bowl. And I think it'll stay that way. I mean, it was that way last year. I mean, Joe Flacco is not a mobile quarterback. He won as a traditional pocket passer. Not a lot of people don't think he's the greatest pocket passer, but nonetheless, he still won the Super Bowl last year and against Kaepernick, who's one of the mobile ones. So,
if I could, I'll tell you what. Not only would I echo that, but I'll take it right to your hometown, and that is you actually on the Eagles had one of each variety.
Correct.
And not only did you use them both with some success because you had to, but I think proved that both concepts are viable. And probably more head coaches and OCs out there are going to continue to think mobile versus, stand up tall and fire. You want the best of both worlds, might need to have both in the best world.
Interesting. Sidekick, one of the things that's frequently talked about is that right now when you take a look at the collegiate ranks, and whether you like the collegiate ranks or you don't, the bottom line is that is the feeder that's going to the NFL. Mm-hmm. The collegiate schemes right now are changing. And so therefore the NFL is going to have to change in order to keep up with that. And it's changing to being that quote-unquote nouveau mobile quarterback. If that's the best that is coming out of the NCAA, out of the collegiate ranks, one would think that ultimately you're going to see that moving more and more across the NFL.
Well, first of all, it's you said this. I'm going to steal your line from this past weekend. This nouveau quarterback isn't nouveau. Hello, Randall Cunningham.
Yep.
I mean, this has been around for a while. We just see it more prevalent now. I think you're starting to see, this sort of trend in college football with the Wildcats and stuff like that. With almost like the double threat quarterback. A guy with his legs and a guy that can throw the ball. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is the guys that can run aren't necessarily the best ball throwers.
Right.
And as you were pointing out on the Eagles, how we had the mobile quarterback and we had the pocket passer. And here's the problem with the mobile quarterback, and we saw this with Michael Vick, and we saw it with RG3. They're out there scrambling and they're getting hurt.
Well,
and now you're looking for another quarterback. I'm sorry. If I'm a coach, I'd rather have a Kurt Warner. I'd rather have a pocket passer.
Yeah.
I want somebody I know can deliver the ball. Well, I don't need him running around.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
Roethlisberger, Philip Rivers, right?
Some mobility,
big guy
some mobility.
That can step away,
I don't want a guy that can't move.
Right, get you
know,
time.
but I want a guy. I want a guy that can move a little bit, but I really want the arm. I want the accuracy. I want him to be able to hit receivers. I don't want my offense based off of trick plays with him running.
One of the other things before we get the horn over there, one of the other things that came out of this, the controversies that came out of this championship weekend, Richard Sherman, Uncle Mark, story or not a story?
Richard Sherman, absolutely not a story. Sorry, don't think it was a big deal.
Yeah,
I was okay with it. Honestly, what the guy had to say. All right, people argue it defies that the guy is intelligent. That's okay. Listen, this man's okay. I don't have a problem with this guy at all. He didn't say anything wrong. At the same time, yeah, he's rubbing salt in the wound. Is that the best thing to do? You talk to me 30 seconds after I've just delivered a championship in my mind, and I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to tell you I'm the best there is too. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's a story.
Sidekick, egotism run amok or no?
Oh, really? You're going to ask me?
Yeah.
No, I love
You're the first person I thought of. How about that?
No, I'm sorry. I love Sherman. I love the emotion. I mean, you're talking about guys, I'm sorry. All these people complaining and, these wussies and stuff. Oh, it's this and you're watching a game where guys are slamming into each other. It's a violent sport. I want to see some emotion off these guys. You know what I mean? Not everybody's going to be a Tom Brady where you're going to be, all eloquent, or a Jimmy Johnson, with your, properly placed words and stuff like that. I want to see some emotion every once in a while.
And
and after, like he said, you basically just sealed the game for your team to go to the Super Bowl. Damn it. Hype up, man.
Yeah, absolutely. On the
I love it.
On the field, they're throwing penalties. We've seen it for taunting. So we already know you can't have this conduct during the game.
Well,
I'm not going to be in your face like this. But you know what? At the end of the game, bragging rights to the victor go the spoils.
And he did get ejected. I mean, he was hot. Right. And actually, he wrote an article.
Yeah, I read it.
Where there was some previous engagement with Crabtree. So I'm sure he was fired up.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
He did not. I'm sorry. There was no foul language like we discussed pre-show and stuff like that. So I'm perfectly okay with him, letting out the emotion.
Let out. If I'm wrong, Brandon. He led the league, I believe, in interceptions this year. Did he?
Yes, I think he's more or less taken over the spot of Darrelle Revis as the cornerback of choice in the NFL.
For this past year.
And he backs up what he says. I have no problem with what he said either. I thought it was awesome. I mean, at least he's not swearing. And as Dave alluded to, there's always, back and forth between a receiver and a cornerback all game long. And you could see in their interaction before that they were, jabbing at each other. So, I have no problem with what he said either.
So, in essence, you are saying he may be the best cornerback in the league.
Right now, yeah, sure. It obviously ebb and flows. And, for a while, Nnamdi Asomugha was considered the best. The Eagles signed him, and he fell off the planet. Yeah. He's not even in the league. Revis got hurt. He came back. He wasn't what he was, and maybe he will next year. You don't know. Right now, this guy's the best thing in the game as far as a cornerback.
All right. Okay. That kind of takes us almost to the halfway point of the show, and the second half of our show brought to you by our friends Jim and Carl over at CLW83.com. Believe it or not, they already have their baseball podcast going, as they've already done their first hot stove production. So believe it or not, they're gearing up already for their baseball season. So get over there at CLW83.com. Check out all of their programming. Thanks, guys, for supporting us here. Seems like every year at this time of year, because I remember last year at this time, because I went back and also took a look at last year's Roundtable program from this time, we were talking about Roger Goodell running his mouth off about rule changes then. Well, it's Roger Goodell, and it's January, so I guess we got to hear about some of these. And let's start it off. There were two this week that kind of made the news, and let's start it off with the first one. And that is that apparently he said right on NFL Network, I believe it was to Rich Eisen in a interview, that yes, in fact, the Rules Committee is taking a look at the concept of eliminating point-after attempts. No more point-after attempts. Get a touchdown, that's 7 points. Sidelines, coaching sideline would then have the option, if they wanted to, go for a conversion. If they make it, that's 8. If they don't, they lose a point, it's 6. I'm going to, Brendan, I'm going to throw it up to you. You know, you strike me as being a football purist, kind of like myself. What's your gut?
You know, it's inevitable, it looks like. I mean, my first thought of it was, you know, I didn't like it, but the more I thought about it, it's like, yeah, they are 90-some% accurate, you know, automatic. And you still have the 2-point option. If you go for 2 and lose, you don't even get the point. So I'm not quite sure how that works out in the scoring of everything. I mean, if the touchdown's 7 without a point, so you decide to go for 2, I guess you have to make a decision and tell the refs so you can line up, because I don't know what the players are going to do, but they'll have to figure out a mechanism of how it's going to work. But I mean, I guess it is kind of a useless play, kind of.
Sidekick, I got a question for you, because I gave it some thought yesterday, and I'm thinking to myself, we have heard Goodell talk so much in the past, it seems like 2 years, about international play. We've talked ad nauseum about him wanting to get a team in London. He has come out and said he wants to see American football in the Olympics. Could this be a precursor to moving towards an international type of flavor to the game?
I don't know. Somebody needs to cut off that man's crack dealer. You know.
Turn his mic off. Turn his mic off.
Please. Somebody hit the dump button when this guy opens his mouth. I mean, leave it at exhibition. You know, I don't have a problem with exhibition and goodwill and showing, you know, American football down under, in England, in Japan, China, wherever you want to.
I'm just throwing it out there. Could this be something that might be leaning towards that? Because look, we've heard about we want to eliminate kickoffs, and they've already done their best to do that. And now we're going to get rid of the kicking position for the place kicker for point afters. I mean, moving away.
That was one of the comments I was going to have. What does Goodell have against kickers?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, does this guy have a hard on for kickers or what? I mean,
he wants to need a field goal kicker.
You know,
well, maybe not though. He might get rid of that.
That's what I'm saying.
They can't.
You want to get rid of punts. You want to get rid of the point after attempt. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the only thing left is a field goal. Why not just ditch the field goal too?
Yeah.
You know, just get rid of the kicker. They're just scrawny little guys anyway. Who needs kickers?
You know what I think they do to make it compelling and still keep the purist involved? Simply move the extra point back 15 yards from where they do it now. Make it actually interesting. Now, is he going to make the kick?
Make it more challenging.
Yeah, let's see a 40.
It'd be a 35-yard extra point versus a 20. I like that.
Why not?
That's a good idea.
Didn't we see like longest on record? What was the longest on record field goal this year?
Right? 64.
Okay, so we already know that the best in the business can boot it from 64. So why don't we set up all extra points at the 40? You want it? Go for it. You want to take 2?
That make everything
you take the chance of getting 2 or not. You get nothing, you're still at 6. But if you want to take the traditional road and always get the 7, earn the 7, but kick it from the 40. Right. Why not?
Now, okay, let's play devil's advocate for 1 second. Let's flip this point after getting rid of the kick thing. Okay, you're awarded 7 automatically.
Right.
Okay, and you were saying about how that would work. What if you get the 7 automatically, and you're allowed the option to now go after the point after? How many teams may start always doing the point after? If there's no negative to it.
Well, there is.
No, there is.
If you don't make the 2, it's only 6.
It becomes a 6.
You get minus.
You get penalized too.
They got to work out the bugs of this.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying a compromise of give it a try or give it a kick or. It doesn't matter. It's still 6 points for a touchdown. Let's leave it that way. Kick further back, get 1. You want to try for 2, go for 2. If you miss out both, you're still at 6. So fundamentally, the rule is still the same.
I like that.
Let's go to one of the other things that was brought up this week, and that's the expansion of the playoffs. And we talked about it last year at this time, and here we are again. A year later, we're talking about it again. So it keeps coming up. It's going to happen, gentlemen. It's going to happen. But one of the things that Goodell did insinuate this week is how logistically they would be played. And in fact, what we'd be looking at would be a game, particularly wild card weekend. That's where it's going to be most, where it's going to feel the impact. You'd have a wild card game played on Friday and 1 played on Monday, a wild card weekend, and then we'd keep our 2 on Saturday and our 2 on Sunday. Sidekick, gut feeling on that one?
I don't know.
We all want to see an expansion of the playoffs, right? It seems like that's what everybody wants.
No.
I agree with you. I know.
I mean, if you're correct, it's coming. It's going to happen. I don't like the fact that you've got a team that potentially could play Sunday and then play Friday.
That's what I don't like.
And then you've got a team that plays Monday that could advance and now has to play either Saturday or Sunday the following week. So you got one team potentially playing short coming off of the regular season, and then you got a team that possibly could be advancing and having to play on a short week.
Right.
I don't see where that's necessarily fair to teams.
No different, though, than that Monday team playing on a Monday Night Football game playing on a Sunday, because that's more than likely where they would schedule them. I've got more of an issue
that's regular
with the team
season
playing on a Friday that just got done playing on a Sunday. Would you say that's the same?
Yeah, I'm not so worried about the days. I mean, because if you play Friday, they'll make you play Saturday. If you're Monday, you'll go to Sunday.
Right.
They'll balance that. I think the problem you run into is you're going to get more questionable teams in, because I mean, look at the Chargers. They were 8-8. You know, on the NFC side this year, I'd give it to you because it probably would have put the Cardinals in, who were 10-6 and deserved to be there.
I don't have a beef. He's right. I wouldn't have a beef.
Do you want another 8-8 team in there, or a 7-9 just to throw in a seventh team?
Well, he's talked about the reseeding concept too.
Well, yeah.
It's possible you might have seen in Arizona get in if he does the reseeding correctly.
I also read, though, that the reseeding thing isn't going to happen. They're not going to give they don't want to take away from the division winners. The competition committee, from what I heard, they might give you the seventh team, but they're not going to do the reseed. Not very likely. Not very likely.
Yeah, because I mean, how burnt would you be to win your division? And not go to the playoffs? I'd be livid.
Yep. Any thoughts, real quick?
No.
No.
Move on.
Other than make it happen, my team would be in.
Make it happen.
Yeah, listen, I came out on the wrong end of the whole seating this year, so I got no comment.
Okay, we've talked a lot about injuries in the NFL. We're not the only ones. It seems like everybody has. In fact, I got some numbers here, believe it or not, from PBS that I can throw out here. But one of the things we talked about a lot, it seemed like in 2012, last season, were all the head injuries. One of the things we've talked about a lot this season have been all the knee, ACL, MCL injuries that we have seen dating all the way back to preseason and even before the first game was played. And I'm going to kick it off with Sidekick. We've talked ad nauseum, and in fact, I think we even just talked about it, might have been even on just last week's show or the week before, where we talked about, doesn't it feel like there have been a lot more knee injuries this year? And yet at the same time, you're also, as I've pointed out numerous times, you've done a lot of research on the whole concussion issues and head trauma. Give us your sense on all of this.
Well, you know, this is actually one of the topics that I threw into the bucket because, you know, we saw all the concussions, and they've come out with all these head rules about, head shots and leading with the helmet and high shots. And so you've got guys now that are saying, hey, I'm going for the knees.
Right.
You won't find me if I take out the knees. But the side of that is you're possibly ending a guy's career, and I think something has to be done about that. What's interesting is the NFL, and we talked about it, like you said, a couple of weeks back, they released a report saying, hey, ACL injuries aren't as bad this year as they were last year. So it's not, but then you find an independent person and they're saying, no, they're up.
Right.
And I think what the NFL is doing is doing fuzzy math and manipulating the numbers to make the scope look like it's not that great.
Well, and in fact, I've got the numbers from ESPN as of December 11th, and this took us right through to week 15. I think we were talking about it was through week 13 when we brought it up on the show a couple of weeks ago. ESPN reporting that through week 15 there were 110 knee injuries versus 99 at the same time last season. So we don't have up-to-date numbers on how the season concluded yet. The 2012 season concluded with 121. 2013, at that time, it was 110. I throw this one out there for either one of you over here on this side. Roger Goodell was quoted as saying that he believes that some of this might be related to the fact that some players are choosing shoes that emphasize speed but sacrifice stability. That sounded like, I'm just saying this one, it's my personal opinion. Let's pass the buck.
Right.
While Dr. Mark Addix, who's an orthopedic surgeon, was quoted as saying that he felt it was reduced football training time in spring and summer, and that's one of the things you and I have talked about as well. Thoughts on the knee injury issues?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of the knee injuries that occurred this year, many cases were, especially with teams that had rashes of them. Philadelphia, for instance, comes to mind, Green Bay, were non-contact. They're non-contact. 3 out of 4, when you look across the league at the IRs, and there were like 200, I believe, approximately 200 players put out to IR, many of which were ACL, MCL injuries. 3 out of 4 were non-contact, meaning they stretched, they slipped, they fell funny, they didn't get rolled over. It wasn't like they got tackled.
So Bradford was on the sideline.
So brittle knees are something to worry about in the game versus concussions, and it's really hard to compare the two injuries because a concussion is only through contact and can really change your life. Unlike the MCL, ACL. It was a rash, but interesting how many are non-contact. In other words, is it because you aren't training properly?
Well,
Great question.
I was going to say, Brandon, Psychic and I brought it up on the show numerous times this season. Possibly training related?
Possibly, yeah. There's been a lot of people's theories that the reduced amount of training camp and contact allowed in the off season is not giving them the conditioning they need. And Dave can probably speak on conditioning, doing with a lot of his training. But that if you're not hitting and you're not used to getting hit, and then all of a sudden you're in a game situation, your body is now not used to that regimen. I think that's one of the reasons I'm wearing Vince Wilfork. He had an Achilles tendon on an innocuous play that put him out for the season. It was almost a non-contact kind of thing. It's the same thing. Maybe these players just need more repetition. And just on a side note, most players that have had the knees hit this year have said they'd rather have a concussion rather than get their knees taken out. They prefer to get hit in the head versus their knees. So, there's got to be a balance. You can't have Dustin Keller in Miami, his knee was just destroyed. So was, Rob Gronkowski on plays that were just not necessary.
Yeah. I don't have the numbers.
And Keller was preseason, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was or very early.
I mean, they were just about to start with him.
Well, and lost in all of this is, and I don't have, I've got numbers through 2012, but and unfortunately I didn't pull the source for it, but I was reading that head injuries continued to rise this year. Now, some of that might be as a result of the fact that they're being ultra cautious. So, in some respects, you got to kind of take that maybe with a little bit of a grain of salt. I don't know. But those numbers are actually up as well. And that's kind of lost in all of this. So that despite all of the, what do they call it, concussion protocol that's now being followed on the sidelines, those numbers are apparently continuing to increase.
And we just saw during the first round of the playoffs, you had 2 players fined for breaking protocol.
Oh yeah, absolutely right.
If you remember correctly, they skipped the protocol and they went back to play.
The protocol is probably catching more, which is making that number happen.
Yeah,
that's
probably
possible
very slight concussions that went unnoticed before because the player didn't even want to say anything about it. They didn't want to be
I think you need to look at it over a number of years and just make sure it's not a fluke. But I wanted to say one thing back on the ACL real quick. I'd like to see a deep dive analysis, because we've seen, like last weekend, we saw that horrific ACL tear of Bowman, which was obviously not a knee hit. That was a roll-up.
Yeah, he rolled on.
I would like, Gronkowski's, that was a clear guy went in low. I would like to actually see a breakdown of what was a hit to the knee of a player versus something that was a roll-up or a non-contact injury, and look at those numbers. to actually get a better
The
understanding.
NFL tracks all that. They track all the trends of injuries, and chances are good it's
Well, I don't know if I
proprietary, and
trust-
they're not going to tell us.
Well, right. And I don't know if I trust
They'll
them.
make it look the way they want it
Right,
to look.
exactly.
With all due
Unless
respect, though-
you can get some independent somebody in there
Yeah.
to say, let's really look at
With
it.
all due respect, though, they do report on some things because there was a report that I got this afternoon right from NFL where they were reporting on head injuries. And to give you an idea, because just real quick, I'm just going to sum it up this way. In 2004, the average number of days lost by a player due to a head injury was 4.8. In 2005, it was 4. In 2006, it was 4.1. 2010, it jumped all the way up to 10.9. 2011, 12, and in last season, it was 16 days lost due to head injuries. So it's obvious the NFL is taking it much more seriously when it comes to the head injury issue.
Well, and that's, that kind of speaks to the protocol working because, one of the things that we've noticed, in my research, on concussions and stuff, it's the repeated, constant, concussions.
Right.
And the guys are playing through concussions and getting another, getting concussed again, that's really causing the most damage. Concussions are bad, but if you allow it to heal, and take the time off from playing, you stand a better chance down the road.
Not having a chronic long-term injury there after the fact.
So
Yeah, you probably
like
recuperate. I don't know if you ever recover, right? That's the question.
Well,
Do you
right.
ever recover? But you can probably recuperate it.
All right. Well, here we sit. We are a week away, a little bit more than a week away from Super Bowl 48. And what we're looking at is we've got the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos. And just like I did at the beginning of the show, one of the things I'd like to do right now, we did talk a little bit back in July about where we might be at this particular time right now. We talked about this 6 months ago, all right? And what I want to do real quick, we're going to jump back in time for just a couple of minutes, take a look at what we were talking about back on that warm day in July.
I took a look this morning at the NFL Vegas lines for who might be winners in the AFC and the NFC and then onward from there. Right now, the Vegas odds have got winners in the AFC. The Denver Broncos are 5-2. New England Patriots are 7-2. Houston Texans are 13-2, and the Baltimore Ravens are 9-1. So that's who they see coming out of the AFC. In the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers are the overwhelming favorite, 15-4. Seattle Seahawks 9-2. Green Bay Packers 6-1. And the Atlanta Falcons, surprisingly, are 15-2. And in the fourth spot, your St. Louis Rams actually are below the Philadelphia Eagles at 25-1. The Eagles are 22-1. The Giants are 12-1 to win the East, but not go any further than that. Projected for the Super Bowl, Denver Broncos versus the San Francisco 49ers. Go ahead. Ring in. Thoughts?
Patriots have a lot of work to do. I don't agree with those odds. They have a lot of work to do. They lost Wes Welker. They lost Aaron Hernandez. They have a lot of work to do. Brady,
Patriots offense needs to be completely reestablished.
Brady needs help.
And
Do
I
you
agree.
see that East going differently?
I don't see the East going differently because the AFC East just flat out sucks. You know,
Like, I don't follow Seattle football, but what I saw last year, they could be a contender this year. I know they're on the list, but they could be a contender more so than they were last year.
I agree with you.
They got the bugs
I'm
worked
not,
out.
I'm not trying to
So
knock
long
them
as-
down and say,
So long as we're not looking at a sophomore slump.
you're
Right,
looking at.
I agree.
You're still looking at teams 2 and 3 in the West because nobody's beaten the 49ers. They're coming out for bear. They lost in that Super Bowl. They're going to be better than they were
Again,
a year
sophomore
ago.
slump could happen.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
you got
think
two
you got
teams-
the.
two teams
I
right
think.
there.
I think right now, if I had to pick a winner, San Francisco is going to win the Super Bowl. That's just my right now.
but on the flip side of that though, do we see the Ravens fall flat on their face? They signed Flacco to that huge contract.
Very hostage
money.
You got my boy retiring. Do we see them fall on their face and not even make the playoffs this
My
year?
opinion about Flacco has not changed. I will continue to be exactly as I have been. I think he's overrated.
I think the
I
Ravens
agree
are
with
going to be a
that.
long shot to make the playoffs the way they've changed that team.
Yeah.
All their leaders are gone.
All right, and so there's our matchup.
Not bad.
Uncle Mark sent us out a great piece, and I kind of want to, maybe we'll start there real quick. Sent us out a piece, I guess it was yesterday, taking a look at all the Super Bowls and some of the records that stand specifically for Super Bowls, and whether, in fact, we could see some of these records drop this particular matchup. And some of them I thought were actually pretty relevant because we've got a quarterback in there that set all kinds of records in Peyton Manning.
Here we go.
Okay? We got a guy, but we've got a number one defense that could very well stop it. Record four most yards passed in one game, 414. Most touchdowns in one game, 6. Most yards per pass in a single game, 14.7. And in fact, I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of thought if anybody was going to break that one in this particular game, it could be Russell Wilson. The reason? Russell Wilson really doesn't pass all that often. He doesn't pass near as often as Peyton Manning. So, throw it out there. What's our thinking on this particular matchup coming up right now?
Well, the one record I think that probably will fall is coldest temperature of a Super Bowl potentially.
Yeah, you're right.
With the polar vortex
I
going,
think you're right on there.
well, I think we're talking.
We'll add that one right now.
I think we're talking about some cold temperatures with these Alberta Clippers and stuff going through. I got a feeling the Super Bowl is going to be good and cold.
Yep.
So, which is good because it's a nice change of pace, I think.
But when you do have the number one, I guess it was Denver. I think Denver was ranked the number one offense in the entire league. Yep. You got the number one offense going up against the number one defense in the league. Is there any chance we could or will see records, or is that just? I mean, we're two immovable objects basically.
No, I'll tell you what. Lynch, what's the rushing yards in the game? I think that's listed up there. I think Lynch could actually beat that number. I forget what the number was. Was it just over 200?
204.
204.
Yeah. And you know what? Not for nothing, the way he's been running since Blunt's out of it, and we're up against
the Denver defense is not a good
your running guy.
Defense.
They worked him in, but here's the thing about them: they use running as a means to their passing game. Whereas Seahawks and Lynch use their run game as their means of game. I think that number might be something.
And like I said, Denver doesn't have a good rushing defense.
Now, on paper, you would say that the Broncos don't have a run defense, but they shut down the Chargers a couple weeks back.
And shut the Patriots down last week.
You know what I mean? So on paper, you may say they're not a good run defense.
Neither one of those teams have a Marshawn Lynch.
No. I mean, it's Marshawn Lynch against their defense and Peyton Manning against the Seahawks defense.
Right.
So
that's where it is. You're right.
So who's going to prevail?
That's what I'm saying. Are we really going to see the records fall? I'm actually highly doubtful.
I don't know. I think it's either going to be you're either going to see the blowout, where the records are going to fall because Peyton's just able to just destroy what would be the number one defense in the NFL. Or possibly you're going to see the number one defense actually shut down the number one quarterback.
Blowout, Brandon, or a tight game?
I think it'll be.
Interestingly, line opened 1 point in favor as Seattle changed recently. Is I think right now 2.5 for Denver.
I think it's going to be a tight game, and I agree with Mark. I think the only chance of a record fall would probably be Marshawn Lynch because if you look at the receivers, Peyton Manning has a lot. He spreads it around so much, so pretty much that'll do any receiver records because of the spreading it around. I don't think Peyton Manning's going to get 6 touchdowns against Seattle.
See him putting up, what's he need, 400 yards passing? I mean, he's done that, but I don't see it happening in the
Seattle's
Super Bowl.
defense is going to probably cancel some of that out, so you might have a good performance, like he might throw 4 touchdowns for 350, but none of that's going to set a record. I think Marshawn Lynch has the best chance. 204 for the yardage or 3 rushing touchdowns. He could maybe get 4.
Possibly
Jerry
both.
Rice has got the record for most touchdowns in one game with 3. He did it twice in 2 different Super Bowls. Eric Decker did it in one game. How many did he have? 4?
Yeah. Oh, it's possible, but
without a doubt.
I don't think Decker's going to get 4 with the Seattle cornerbacks.
Interesting.
It might actually go to kickers. Who knows? It might be the most field goals you see. It'll be that kind of
thing. You never know because supposedly word on the street is Sherman's going to be lining up against Demaryius Thomas.
Right.
Right.
So that may open up some of the other guys.
They have 2 other guys who are relatively young who have made waves, and they're going to be on Decker and Welker. So,
but I guess my point is there's so many receiving weapons on the Broncos. I don't think there's enough, cornerbacks and safeties
that can read it fast enough
that are going to be able to keep up with all. Somebody's going to be open.
He's got too many weapons. You're right.
I mean, it's going to be a spread offense.
There's only one Richard Sherman. Right, exactly.
So.
All right, close game, tight game. You don't have to give a prediction. We'll wait on that for next week.
I got a feeling it's going to be a close game.
Oh yeah, close game.
Okay, we're all in agreement.
Yep.
Close game. Okay.
So it's going to be a blowout.
But no blow by.
That should have been my line actually. But all right, there you have it. There's our nothing but football chat, and we'll be doing it again. Well, just about 6 months from now, when we're getting ready for our preseason roundtable. Before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody, please get over and check out our Facebook page. Lots of fan-friendly stuff going on over there, and a lot of fans too. Yep. So you want to make sure you want to get in and jump in on that and be part of that. And then you never know, you might just get your post highlighted right here, because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm giving you our Frat House Sports Facebook post of the week, which was a post that was put up about the Jets and about one Geno Smith. That coming just within hours of all kinds of just wonderful, lovely reports about Kellen Winslow. But this got the most views, the most activity, most comments. So get over to our Facebook page. Leave us a note there, and make sure you like us and get a couple of friends to like us as well. How about this one? Hopefully all you guys have taken a good look at our FratHouseSports.net webpage. Wow, complete turnover this week. There's not a single story on the top of the page right now that is the same as last week at this time. Every single thing is changed.
It's a veritable blizzard of new information.
It was.
Right there.
And it was timely with everything that's happening, right in our neck of the woods. But no, you got FratHouseSports.net. Make sure you get over there and check that out. And I hope all of you enjoyed tuning into us this week and enjoying this show. Send us your comments over on our Facebook page or over on their YouTube channel. Let us know what you think of this particular program, because God knows we love doing this one twice a year. This one is just so much fun. All right, we're going to see you back here next week with our regular formatted program. And before then, and of course that'll be right on the eve, we'll be counting down the hours to the Super Bowl.
Big game.
And you'll get our predict on the Super Bowl at that point. So, but before then, you know what you got to do for me. You got to keep us real. You got to keep us live. You got to keep us going. We'll see you next week. This is the time of year where Roger Goodell loves to get on his soapbox and talk rule changes. So we're going to talk point after attempts. That's one of them. And then, of course, he also made comments this week.
For Roger Goodell. Sorry.
This week about the expansion of the playoffs.
And it's good.
Expansion of the playoffs. What that would mean.
I kind of like the expansion of the playoff thing if we get a Friday night and a Monday night game out of it.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm the team having to play Friday, I'm not going to be very happy. You're coming off of a Sunday game and you got to play Friday.
Yeah, he's claiming to keep it balanced, though, that he would do the same with the following team that plays on Monday wouldn't have to play till the following Sunday.
But
so it
even
would all
during
be
the regular season, a lot of times, didn't we see where they made accommodations for the team that had to play on a Thursday? Were there accommodations somehow or another made for that team that had to play on a Thursday?
Yeah.